You know, Congressman, if you had just ended with your first statement and said, well, we may have screwed up the perimeter, you could maybe attribute it to ignorance. Layered incompetence always means intent, correct? So I'll give you an example. You're in a mall parking lot, it's 97 degrees, and you leave a kid in there and you close the door. Did they intend to kill the kid? Probably not. But how stupid do you have to be to do that? So in Secret Service training, you're basically taught a ring-based system, but don't think of it as rings. Think of it as a three-dimensional ring, like a bubble with rings. So you got this circle, but it's three-dimensional above and below. In that outer ring, again, this is Secret Service 101, Charlie Brown encyclopedia stuff. This isn't like advanced level PDT, protective detail training. In that outer ring, you have police officers. That outer ring is out to about 1,000 yards, which is about what a really technically proficient sniper can hit. Why was the perimeter set to, again, absolute total incompetence? But then factor in the other things, and I just want to add a few more. How is it that a counter surveillance unit whose actual job is to detect, to counter surveillance, that's what they do. They're the best at what they do. We asked the question during the conversation we had earlier. How is it that they missed this guy roaming around when the police officers, clearly using their good law enforcement instincts, said we've got a problem? The answer is because they weren't there. Is that incompetence, or is that shutting the door in 97 degrees with your kid there going, I just didn't know? How did you not have a roof line 130 yards away secured when you're taught day one in Secret Service training that the effective range of a really quality sniper is out to 1,000 yards? How did you not have a drone that... Not only did you not have a drone, again, this is where we get to the shutting the door in 97 degrees and pretending you didn't know. It was offered. They offered you a drone. It's unforgivable. And just think of the rings quickly, and I'll wrap this up. So in the outer ring, you have police officers, you have counter surveillance, and you have a protective intelligence team. Protective intelligence team is trained to go and find threats. They miss them. There's no counter surveillance team. The cops catch it, but because the comms break down, they miss it. In that middle perimeter, you have what they call post standers. Post standers they're not DTD agents. They're field office agents. They're not Donald Trump detail agents. Those guys were not even Secret Service. They were HSI, most of them, who were great guys and were fantastic. But that's not what they do. If you grab me as a former Secret Service guy and said, hey, Dan, can you go do a Homeland Security investigation? No, that's not what I learned. We are training Secret Service agents to do protection so we don't have to use other entities that don't do protection. So that's the middle perimeter. So that breaks down. The inner perimeter, as you just saw, and I'm glad you played that video, envision that as what we would call the shift, the body guys, right? He's got a shift around them and supervisors. Everyone missed that guy crawling across the roof when he defeated the external, the middle, and the internal perimeter. You shut the door in 97 degrees. I'm sorry. Layered intent, layered incompetence like that is absolutely intent.
I'll let some of the experts on that subject follow up on that. I think there's probably some more follow up there. I just want to ask one last question, my last minute of time. Mr. Bongino, we talked about this before. I have seen credible information, the extent to which the shooter had significant explosives that were sophisticated beyond that you would expect some 20-year-old just to put together, and that he had sophisticated detonation devices on his person, or a sophisticated detonation device. And importantly, that his digital footprint is completely MIA, that his digital footprint is missing. And that how can a 20-year-old in today's time have no digital footprint? So do you have any thoughts on that, any comments on that? And that'll be my last question.
Well, 4 years of doing protective intelligence investigations with the Secret Service, interviewed probably hundreds of people who have credibly threatened our protectees. I've never seen anything like it. If you would have told me it was a 60-year-old guy who had lived most of his life without a computer and for the last 10 years had been planning this, hard to believe, but digestible. You're telling me a 20-year-old kid who's grown up in the digital era figured this out when he was, what, 13, to never get an online presence? We've seen nothing. Nothing. We're now 6 weeks in. There's not a Facebook photo. You know, it's incredible. We know every single thing about these shooting incidents when there's a political narrative to be had by the media and the other side. We do. You know who their high school girlfriend was. Sadly, you know everything about these people. We know nothing about this guy. And sophisticated explosives, we have this massive law enforcement bureaucracy No one's got him with an online search history at a library saying, how do I build this? He's 20 years old. It just defies logic. I can tell you, again, 4 years doing these exact investigations, never, ever seen or heard anything like this in my life.
Well, we could go on that. I know some of my other my colleagues might want to do that as well. But I want to get to one last point, and that before I run out of time, and that is another failure. I think everybody here is probably, everybody up on this group anyway, has been with a president or a protectee, and there's been some kind of security hold. I mean, we've just stopped, and you say you're going to hold. Why was there no security hold put on Trump at any time if you had some kind of individual? I mean, that Ben, as Mr. Schaefer has described, actually did arise to a threat level. Why was there no security hold put on President Trump? Why was he allowed to go on the stage? Why wasn't he taken down? Why didn't we see a pause?
For me?
Yeah, Dan.
What makes your question even more impactful is every Secret Service site for a high threat level protectee has what they call a holding room, which you would guess is for holding the protectee. I see Congressman Gacy because it's actually called the holding room. The holding room is for things just like this. The holding room is, let's say a congressman shows up and is a little late. There's an accident. They'll hold him in the holding room so they can join. You all have been in it. None of this is new. You've been in the holding room. There's a Secret Service agent at the door. You guys have congressional hardpins. A staffer escorts you in. Every one of you has seen this or will in the Trump administration. This is not a mystery to anyone. Why was he put on what Eric had called, accurately so, the X? We use the exact same terminology as the military. The X is where that protectee or that limo with the protectee in it is. Why was he put on the X? You have an open threat. Ben has described, and your timeline lays out, was there for an hour. I'm not going to play any word games. Were they a threat or suspicious? Well, if you're a threat, it's because you're doing something suspicious. And if you're suspicious, it's because you could be a threat. These are silly, stupid word games. You know when it's not a threat? When your CSU or PI team goes and grabs the guy and determines he's not a threat. Until then, your question's accurate. You put him in the holding room, which is the point of the holding room.
Can I ask one more question? So I just want to follow that up. And you made the point earlier about counter surveillance. There were no counter surveillance teams there. There's a public domain videos of him, Mr. Crooks, wandering around. Was there anything in his behavior wandering around that if you would have had a counter surveillance team there, it would have triggered an interaction with this guy earlier?
I'm going to answer yes, but respectfully, and I know you understand, the CSU and PI teams are trained in very specific behavioral indicators that would give off, and speaking about them openly would probably give operational knowledge to bad guys. I know you understand that, but the short answer is not only one, but many behavioral indicators he was giving off that if we could talk in a secure setting, you'd be like, how did they miss this? The CSU team would not have missed it if they were there, which they weren't.
Thank you so much, Mr. Biggs. We will now go to the Honorable Eli Crane for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Bongino, do you have any confidence that Secret Service has learned their lesson?
No, because I've been involved in a number of, we have 10 years in the Secret Service. I was in the training center when the Georgia grenade nearly exploded. And, the only reason it didn't kill President Bush is because the guy wrapped it in a towel. That's it. It's the only reason he survived, because we got lucky. And the changes made from that lasted about a month. They added more magnetometers. And then basically the same problems resurface again. So no.
I want to read a text to you and see what your thoughts are on this. Do you know who Joe Kent is? Mr. Bongino? Joe Kent, he's running for Congress right now, Special Forces guy.
Oh, yes.
Up in Washington.
Yeah.
This is a text he sent me on, I believe, Monday, August 19th. He said, "Hey, brother, I know you are doing an independent J13 investigation. I want to share this anecdote with you from my experience with Speaker Mike Johnson's U.S. Secret Service detail this weekend. Bottom line up front, Speaker's detail was incredibly lax. failed to seal off all entrances to a very small venue. Johnson wasn't secured and very easy to access. Long version. We had a local steakhouse host my fundraiser with the speaker. Location was only available after people RSVP'd. But the entrances to the steakhouse had Kent for Congress signs on the 2 entrances. One entrance was inside the hotel, one out on the street in a busy pedestrian area. I arrived about 45 minutes early to check out the venue and to make sure my team had stuff ready. I also wanted to see if the U.S. Secret Service had a checkpoint set up. I carry everywhere. I planned on leaving my pistol in a hotel room my team had there. I entered the hotel, followed the Kent signs into the steakhouse, and immediately walked up to the unsecured holding room the speaker was in. He was on a call, so he did not notice me. Neither did any of his detail. His detail was inside the restaurant just BSing. No control over the 2 entrances at all. Once the event started, they put on a good show and looked the part. I can't interpret their intent, but they failed a basic, simple task: secure the 2 entry points, a shocking level of incompetence. The event was in Vancouver, in the shadow of Portland, Oregon. Mr. Bongino, is Speaker Johnson, what's his job?
Well, that would be Capitol Hill Police, but it speaks to a larger issue with these security failures. What was mentioned about 3/4 of the way through that text, where everything becomes about optics. I'll give you just a quick example. You know, think about this. Why are Secret Service agents out there wearing suits? You don't see that with a lot of Israeli Shin Bet and others, because the threat over there is existential every day. I mean, these are little things. You're worried about optics and what people look like, red ties on agents and guys who've got their shoes shined, when you're not worried about door kickers who are going to keep you alive. The good show part is a problem, and it's ubiquitous, whether it's DSS, whether it's Capitol, whether it's Secret Service. We have to start focusing on job tasks and not, operational optics or who's got the freshly pressed suit on. These guys have to be out there ready to go into action and defeat that 15, 20-man Hezbollah team or group of Sicarios Eric's talking about before. This was a 20-year-old kid who broke them down. Can you imagine if they had detonated, taken out that fence line and rushed a 10, 15-man team in there with rifles and heavy weapons? There would have been a mass murder scene. That motorcade would have never gotten out of there.
Yeah. Thank you. You were talking about slings earlier and how long it took the Secret Service to adopt slings on their primary weapon system. Why is it important to have a sling on primary weapon system? And what is this? Why did it take so long for the Secret Service to get on board with having their agents carry slings?
I candidly wish I was joking with you guys, but I'm not. The Secret Service's operating kind of de facto motto when I was there about technology, we're laughingly calling it sling technology. I mean, it's like technology like the wheels technology, right? Is because we've always done it that way. I'm not kidding. You get a bunch of Secret Service agents up here and you get them on the record, and they will tell you exactly that. I remember when GPS technology first started, and President Bush was riding his bike, and we brought a guy into headquarters, and we said, hey, we're losing President Bush a lot on the bike. I mean, he was a good biker. He'd go in the woods. And, the guys were with him, but the motorcade was having a hard time finding him. Well, maybe we should look at this thing called GPS. We've never done it that way before. Why would you need a sling? For 1,000 different reasons. You may need to go hands-on. You may need to grab a ladder. You may have a weapons malfunction. What are you going to do? Hand the weapon to someone else in the crowd while I get my pistol? This is technology the military's been using, as you know, since World War I. Who knows? It's a mentality where no one wants to take a chance. And if nothing's happened because they got lucky in the past, then there's no reason to change anything.
Mr. Bongino.
Odd, to say the least, yes.
I want to go back to something earlier as well. Mr. Bongino, Secret Service, NYPD, worked in the actual training of it. Do you believe that a protective detail should be appointed based upon the title you carry or the threat level based upon the office in which you are to obtain?
It should exclusively be based on a threat assessment. It should have nothing to do with the title.
And do you agree that if you were the Secret Service director, that when the request came in based on President Trump's profile, based on the existing threats that would need to be mitigated, based on the request by his own officers, that would be something that you would approve or disapprove?
There isn't a scenario where a sane, rational, well-trained Secret Service agent would deny CSU or counter-sniper assets to a threat, to a protectee with a threat footprint like Donald Trump. Not a chance.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I know that you're enjoying the private sector, but I can tell you we'd have been far better off by having the director of the Secret Service be Dan Bongino than it be Ronald Rowe or Director Cheadle. I'm going to go ahead with this and turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Honorable Chip Roy, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Bongino, I'll let you comment on that, and I'll ask you one more question in closing, because I know you need to go. We had some reporting from Ms. Crabtree, who was here with the panel earlier and is with us now, earlier about the potential engagement or interference, I should say, by Iranian authorities in terms of our ability to protect our president, Secret Service, and so forth. Do you have any perspectives on that and why that's particularly problematic, or anything to add about that, and how our foreign adversaries are viewing what we're seeing unfold in front of us?
Well, I want you to keep in mind that we've known about the Iranian threat after the death of Soleimani to John Bolton, Donald Trump, former President Trump, and others for well over 3 years now. So there's no, keep in mind, this is a regime that has a history of documented terror attacks who sloganeers death to America. So they're not actually, their motives are, you don't have to investigate their motives, they tell you. They've known about it. If they have, and Susan's an excellent reporter, if you're not following her, you're making a big mistake on this. I have no reason to not believe her reporting or its accuracy. She's been that good.
3 sources, if I remember correctly.
If these 3 sources are accurate, that we have been compromised and security allocation decisions are being made by people under the influence of the Iranian terror regime, then this is going to be a whole different panel if we do this again.
Mr. Bongino, I want to turn to you real quick. As somebody with a lot of experience in the Secret Service, is it correct, sir, that you at this point have members of the Secret Service whistleblowing and calling you right now to talk to you about the culture of the Secret Service?
There are so many. It's getting to the point now where I thank them and say, but I've already heard that from 10 other guys. And I bring that up because none of these problems are new. Anybody telling you that is lying directly to your face, and you better hope they're not under oath. Anyone is suggesting in a congressional hearing or elsewhere that these problems are new, the personnel problems, the logistics problems, the manpower problems, the technology problems. I just told you a sad running joke in the service when I was there. I'm gone since 2011. Last time I checked, it's 2024. It was yesterday's technology tomorrow. And other things here that are inexcusable that have been brought up before, like Ben and Eric just brought up. The communication failures are basic. This isn't like the Secret Service $1 million radio system that uses NSA-level encryption magically broke down that day. They literally handed them a radio they didn't take. This is why when Congressman Mills says, borderline criminal negligence, you should take that seriously. What could possibly be your excuse to say, you know what, I don't really need to communicate with the law enforcement guys out there on the scene. We asked to, they had no obligation to be there. It's a Secret Service's job to protect the president. Out of a courtesy, they showed up. And you don't even have the respect of these local law enforcement people, respect for them to take the radio? I mean, where was the CP, the command post? The way this works, so everybody understands, or it's supposed to and didn't that day, for reasons still unexplained outside of, again, obscene negligence, any trip for a high-level protectee, you're supposed to have a command post that runs the whole trip at the airport or whatever. They'll communicate with everyone. But those individual sites, like in Butler County, have security rooms themselves, which are kind of mini CPs at each site. Where was it? According to what Ben said before, and from what I've heard, it was either not there or the locals were running it, offered communications, and the Secret Service, whose job it was that day to protect President Trump, said, we're going to pass on the comms. Really, you described it as catastrophic. He's 100% correct. Eric knows exactly what he's talking about. Just apocalyptic failure.
Mr. Bongino, in your opinion, is the Secret Service in a better spot today with Director Rowe in charge?
No, it's worse. And sadly, I'm glad this is all being recorded, because when something else happens, and I hope it doesn't, I pray to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, that I'm wrong. That you play this and go, look, that guy was crazy. You think this is the last incident, you're out of your mind. We have seen these incidents over and over. We saw the Georgia grenade incident with President Bush. They overtook the magnetometers. The Secret Service leadership in charge now with the exact same people. Exact same. Can you imagine a C-suite at a company that makes widgets? We find out that there's a design defect. The widget explodes and kills 10 people, and the CTO gets a promotion to CEO. You understand that's what happened here, correct? These are the same people. Kim Cheadle, the director, wasn't even fired. She was allowed to resign. She'll go get some cushy job somewhere, and her deputy, who is one of the guys behind these stupid waste of time things like agents wearing red ties on the detail. Because this actually happened, by the way. These people will tell you this under oath if you get the right people. He was concerned about the tie color of the agents on the detail because it seemed to imply he supported President Trump. Congressman Biggs wearing a red tie. You're wearing a semi-red tie. It has nothing to do with anything. This is the kind of stuff the Secret Service was actually wasting their time with while withholding CSU counter surveillance assets and counter sniper assets from probably the most threatened man on earth. If you can explain it, good luck, because that's not the agency I worked for.